The 1970s television tried to sanitize war for family viewing, but a handful of shows refused to play nice. These programs pushed boundaries, showed blood on screen, questioned authority, and made audiences squirm in their living rooms. Some got censored, others got canceled, and a few became legends precisely because they dared to show war without the Hollywood gloss. Which show made censors demand edits before every broadcast? Number 12, Hogan's Heroes, 1965-1971. This World War II POW comedy limped into the 70s before finally getting axed in 1971. Setting a sitcom in a Nazi prison camp sounds insane today, but for 6 seasons, Colonel Hogan and his merry band of prisoners made Stalag 13 look like summer camp. The show faced massive controversy from day one for making light of concentration camps and turning Nazis into bumbling fools. Werner Klemperer, who played Colonel Klink, only took the role on one condition: the Nazis could never win. Ever. He and John Banner, who played Sergeant Schultz, were both Jewish actors who fled Nazi Germany, making their performances even more loaded with subtext. Robert Clary, who played LeBeau, was a Holocaust survivor with a concentration camp tattoo on his arm. Critics argued the show trivialized the horrors of war, while defenders said making Nazis look like idiots was the ultimate revenge. The real VMF 214 Black Sheep veterans hated how their squad was portrayed. CBS pulled the plug as All in the Family ushered in a new era of socially conscious television. By 1971, making jokes about POW camps felt tone-deaf as Vietnam coverage flooded living rooms nightly. The show's cancellation marked the end of war as light entertainment on American television. Number 11, The World at War, 1973-1974. This British documentary series hit screens in 1973 and didn't hold back one frame of horror. Thames Television spent £900,000 to create 26 episodes of unflinching World War II reality. Laurence Olivier narrated footage that American networks wouldn't touch. The episode, titled Genocide, aired without commercial interruption because sponsors refused to be associated with footage of concentration camp victims. Producers interviewed Nazi officials including Karl Dönitz and Adolf Galland, giving them platforms that made many uncomfortable. They showed mass graves, emaciated prisoners, and the aftermath of firebombing campaigns in graphic detail. The series interviewed Hitler's personal secretary Traudl Junge and tracked down Heinrich Himmler's adjutant Karl Wolff, who admitted on camera to witnessing mass executions. Critics called it exploitative, while historians praised its authenticity. The Imperial War Museum fought with producers over which footage was too disturbing for broadcast. They included it anyway. American networks initially refused to air several episodes without heavy editing. PBS eventually showed the complete series, but buried it in late nighttime slots. The show proved that war documentaries could be both educational and deeply uncomfortable, setting a standard that made network executives nervous for decades. Number 10, BAA Black Sheep, 1976-1978. Robert Conrad led a squadron of misfit Marines through World War II in this 1976 action series that glorified aerial combat. The Washington Post called it a war is swell series aimed at anyone who remembers World War II as a rousing fraternity turkey shoot. Real VMF 214 Black Sheep pilots despised the show for turning them into Hollywood pretty boys. Pappy Boyington himself served as technical advisor, but later called it inaccuracies, hogwash, and Hollywood hokum. The series featured actual Corsair fighter planes and real combat footage mixed with staged dogfights. CBS censors demanded edits to remove offensive material before the show even premiered. The first season showed pilots getting shot down, burning alive in cockpits, and dealing with the psychological toll of killing. Network executives wanted more romance and less carnage. Season 2 added nurses called Pappy's Lambs in a desperate grab for female viewers. The focus shifted from gritty combat to soap opera drama. Ratings plummeted because viewers who wanted war got romance, while viewers who wanted romance watched other shows. NBC canceled it after 36 episodes. Retired Colonel Henry McCartney said the list of historical errors was too long to repeat. The show wanted to be both Top Gun and a serious war drama, but succeeded at neither. It remains a perfect example of networks trying to make war palatable and failing spectacularly. Number 9. Combat, 1962 to 1967. This World War II infantry series from the 60s bled into the 70s in syndication and international markets. Rick Jason and Vic Morrow led a squad through France showing dirt, death, and moral ambiguity rare for early 60s television. Episodes featured American soldiers executing prisoners, civilians getting caught in crossfire, and the squad making choices with no right answers. One episode dealt with a soldier going insane from combat stress. Network censors forced cuts to scenes showing blood and graphic violence. The series filmed at outdoor locations, giving it a documentary feel that made violence hit harder. Writers based episodes on real combat reports from veterans. Soldiers wrote letters to producers saying the show captured war more accurately than any news coverage. ABC moved it to different time slots, trying to avoid primetime controversy. The show depicted war as exhausting, terrifying, and morally complicated decades before that became acceptable. International broadcasts showed uncut versions with more graphic violence. American audiences didn't see the real combat until DVD releases in the 2000s. The series influenced tour of duty creators who called it an updated combat set. Been by Vietnam. Its gritty realism made it too intense for family viewing in an era when westerns dominated and good guys always won cleanly. Number 8. All in the Family, 1971-1979. This sitcom tackled war through Archie Bunker's World War II service and his clashes with son-in-law Mike over Vietnam. Episodes dealt with draft dodging, the morality of Vietnam, and what military service meant to different generations. One episode featured Archie defending the war, while Mike called it immoral imperialism. CBS censors fought producers over language and political content in every war-related episode. The show aired scenes of Archie and Mike screaming at each other about dead soldiers and wasted lives. Network executives worried it was too divisive for prime time. Carroll O'Connor, who played Archie, was a vocal anti-war activist, making his character's pro-war stance deeply ironic. Rob Reiner, who played Mike, later said the Vietnam arguments were the hardest scenes to film because the emotions were real. The show featured a Vietnam veteran character dealing with PTSD before anyone called it PTSD. Conservative viewers thought the show mocked patriotism, while liberal viewers thought it gave bigots a platform. Producer Norman Lear based war arguments on real fights happening in American homes. One episode showed Archie's friend dying suddenly, forcing Archie to confront mortality and the meaning of military service. The show turned living rooms into battlegrounds as families argued about the same topics the bunkers fought over. It proved war shows didn't need combat footage to be controversial when they questioned why Americans were dying overseas. Number 7. MASH, 1972-1983. Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce performed surgery in a Korean War MASH unit, but everyone knew they were really talking about Vietnam. The show premiered in 1972 and immediately faced censorship battles. Early episodes showed blood, gore, and soldiers dying on operating tables during family viewing hours. CBS censors demanded the laugh track be removed from operating room scenes because executives feared audiences would think the network was laughing at dying soldiers. Writers fought constant battles to keep anti-war messages in scripts. One episode based on real Korean War soldier interviews showed the complete mental breakdown of a character. Another episode featured a soldier bleeding out while doctors couldn't save him. The series killed off major characters without warning. something sitcoms never did. Henry Blake died in a plane crash. Network executives wanted the character to retire safely. Producers refused and shot the scene anyway. When it aired, viewers flooded CBS with complaints and angry letters. The show dropped its laugh track entirely in later seasons, becoming a straight drama disguised as comedy. Episodes dealt with soldiers arriving as body parts in bags. One showed a soldier desperate to get sent home, mutilating himself. Another featured a surgeon having a nervous breakdown after witnessing a mother suffocate her own baby to keep North Korean soldiers from discovering refugees. That episode traumatized audiences. Critics said it was too dark for television. The finale in 1983 drew over 125 million viewers, making it the most-watched television episode in history. The show succeeded by disguising a savage anti-war message as a comedy, sneaking past censors who might have killed it outright if they'd realized what it really was from the start. Number 6. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, 1967-1969. This variety show got canceled in 1969, but its impact bled into 70s consciousness about how networks handled war criticism. Tommy and Dick Smothers turned their comedy show into an anti-Vietnam War platform. CBS censors fought them over every sketch. The network banned a segment where Pete Seeger sang "Waist Deep in the Big Muddy," an obvious Vietnam metaphor. They cut sketches critical of President Johnson. Censors demanded script changes before every taping. The brothers smuggled anti-war messages into comedy bits. Guest stars included Joan Baez dedicating a song to her husband in prison for draft dodging. Harry Belafonte performed against footage of the 1968 Democratic Convention riots. CBS executives claimed the show violated standards, but critics said the network caved to political pressure. Tommy Smothers later said they were targeted for challenging authority during wartime. The show's cancellation became a rallying cry for artistic freedom. It demonstrated that networks would kill successful programs if they criticized war too directly. The Smothers brothers sued CBS and won a breach of contract settlement. Their firing showed future producers exactly where the line was and what happened when you crossed it. The show's death haunted 70s television, reminding creators that anti-war content had consequences. Number 5. The Final War of Ollie Winter, 1967. This 1967 television movie starred Ivan Dixon and earned an Emmy nomination for its brutal honesty about race and war. Dixon played a black soldier dealing with racism while fighting in Vietnam. The film showed violent combat and questioned American presence in Southeast Asia. Networks initially refused to air it during prime time. When it finally broadcast, it came with content warnings. The movie depicted a soldier's complete psychological breakdown in graphic detail. Censors cut scenes showing dead Vietnamese civilians. Critics called it too political for entertainment television. The film aired once and then disappeared from broadcast rotation for decades. Its frank discussion of racial tension in military units made executives uncomfortable. Dixon's performance showed the toll war took on black soldiers who faced discrimination at home and bullets abroad. The movie asked whether black men should fight for a country that treated them as second-class citizens. That question made it radioactive for reruns. Networks claimed it was too depressing, while critics said it was too honest. The film influenced how later war shows handled race, but most audiences never saw it because it stayed buried in network vaults. Number 4. Roots, 1977. This 1977 miniseries dealt with slavery as a different kind of war and showed violence that shocked America. Alex Haley's story featured whippings, brandings, and brutal violence that networks initially said was too graphic for broadcast. ABC executives fought over every violent scene. Producers insisted the horror needed to be shown to convey the reality of slavery. The miniseries depicted castration, murder, and rape. Censors allowed it because it was historical but demanded edits to the most graphic moments. 130 million viewers watched over 8 nights. The series showed Americans that television could depict historical violence if the story justified it. This opened doors for future war shows to be more graphic. The success of Roots proved audiences would watch difficult, violent content if it felt important. Network executives learned they could push boundaries if they claimed educational or historical value. The show faced accusations of being too violent and too political. Southern stations initially refused to air it. The violence shown in Roots became the new benchmark for what was acceptable on television. Future war shows pointed to Roots when arguing for their own violent content. Number 3. The Life and Times of Lord Mountbatten. This 1969 Thames television documentary featured Mountbatten narrating his own wartime experiences, including ordering operations that killed thousands. He discussed bombing campaigns, military failures, and the partition of India that resulted in mass casualties. British networks aired the unedited series, but American broadcasts cut controversial segments. Mountbatten's frank discussion of wartime decisions that resulted in civilian deaths made executives nervous. The documentary showed war as a series of calculated choices where leaders traded lives for strategic advantage. Mountbatten admitted mistakes and second-guessed decisions. This level of honesty from a living war hero was unprecedented. Networks worried it undermined respect for military leadership. The series influenced how The World at War would be produced. It demonstrated that participants could narrate their own history even when that history was uncomfortable. American broadcasts removed segments discussing British military incompetence and colonial violence. The cuts highlighted how American networks sanitized war content compared to British television. The full series didn't air in America until cable channels imported it decades later. Number 2. Victory at Sea. This 50s series got rebroadcast throughout the 70s, introducing new audiences to its graphic naval warfare footage. NBC originally produced it in 1952, using real combat footage. 70s reruns included scenes of sailors burning alive, ships exploding with men still aboard, and kamikaze pilots crashing into vessels. Networks aired it during daytime hours, not realizing how graphic the footage was. Parents complained when children saw sailors drowning and bodies in the water. Stations started adding content warnings or moving it to late-night slots. The series used real footage of men dying in combat. You could see sailors jumping from burning ships. Kamikaze attacks were shown in full horrific detail. Networks had aired this content in the 50s without controversy, but 70s audiences found it disturbing. The difference was that Vietnam had made Americans more sensitive to war violence. What seemed patriotic in the 50s felt exploitative in the 70s. Some stations stopped broadcasting it altogether. Others edited out the most graphic combat footage. The series revealed how American attitudes toward showing war violence had shifted. What was once acceptable documentary footage became too intense for broadcast. Victory at Sea's troubled 70s run demonstrated that context matters more than content when it comes to what audiences will accept. Number 1. World in Action. This British current affairs show covered Vietnam, Northern Ireland conflicts, and Cold War tensions with reporting too controversial for American networks. Granada television producers went into war zones and showed footage American networks refused to air. Episodes featured wounded soldiers, civilian casualties, and anti-war protesters in graphic detail. One episode about Northern Ireland showed bombings and their aftermath, including bodies and blood. British networks aired it unedited, while American broadcasts were heavily censored. The show sent reporters to Vietnam, who filmed combat operations, including soldiers dying on camera. Networks cut those scenes from American versions. World in Action reported on war crimes allegations and military cover-ups. The series questioned official government narratives about wars. This made it politically dangerous for American networks to broadcast. Some episodes never aired in America at all. The show demonstrated the gap between British and American willingness to show war reality on television. American networks claimed the footage was too graphic, but critics said they were protecting government interests. World in Action won awards for journalism that American networks called irresponsible. The series proved that 70s British television would show war content that American broadcasters considered too gritty for prime time. Its episodes remain some of the most unflinching war coverage ever broadcast, most of which American audiences never saw, because networks decided they couldn't handle the truth. These shows proved the 70s wasn't ready for honest war coverage on television. Networks censored, canceled, and buried programs that showed combat reality instead of patriotic mythology. Some succeeded by disguising anti-war messages as comedy. Others got destroyed for being too direct. The few that survived changed what was possible on television, paving the way for the brutal war content we see today. Which show do you think was the grittiest? Did networks make the right call censoring war violence, or did they rob audiences of the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's debate whether 70s television chickened out or made the right choice protecting viewers from the horrors of war.